Recently, we find a problem for LinkedIn event. We find the user engagement for LinkedIn event has dropped dramatically these days. Could you tell me the possible reasons and how you want to analyze this problem?
Okay, so we have linking events, user usage dropped significantly, right? That's the problem we were talking about.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely a serious problem because we know like linking events is kind of one of the main drivers of a lot of the engagements on the LinkedIn platform. So we definitely need to figure out what's going on here. Okay, so before we start, I'd like to ask a few clarification questions. So first, I'd like to know, like in terms of time span, like how fast does this happen, like, and for how long does this process go on? Like, is this a sudden change, or it's just more a gradual process? Yeah.
It is a gradual change. In terms of the time frame, it is roughly around the recent 2 weeks. So we see a gradual drop from the 2 weeks before, and it is throughout these 2 weeks.
Okay, sounds good. And I also like to know, like in terms of location, like if it's just happening across the board, or it just happening in some specific locations. Yeah, country, city, states, yeah, whatever the granularity.
Right now, it is happening globally. Globally, we mean mainly U.S. market and also our British market, French market, and Japanese market.
Okay. Okay, so it's mostly across the board, right? Doesn't seem to be clustered somewhere. Okay. Okay, that's so good to know. Okay, and in terms of the platform, is it like focused on some specific platform, in terms of device types, operating systems, and specific app versions? Yeah.
Right now, we're seeing a drop across all the platforms, but among the platform, we're seeing a bigger drop in the mobile app.
Okay, mobile app. So it's just kind of happening all over the place, but bigger drop is in mobile, right?
Right.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so what I'm hearing right now is that in terms of time, it's happening gradually in the past 2 weeks, and in terms of location, it's happening globally. So it's just kind of across the board. And in terms of platform, it's also happening across all platforms, but the bigger one is in the mobile. Okay, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, just last clarification question before we proceed to find the root cause. So in terms of user segment, like are we seeing any like kind of particular clusterings of the declining usage in some specific user groups? I don't know, in terms of age, genders, professions, and also in terms of like the specific type of users, like recruiters, enterprise users, HRs, and job seekers. Yeah, I'm just curious if there's any like specific clusterings in terms of user segment. Yeah.
Right now, we haven't checked that part of data. I don't have any information about that, but feel free to do your own hypothesis.
Okay, so that one is not clear yet. Okay, sounds good. All right, I'll just take 1 minute to have a look at the data points we have, and then we will proceed to have a look at the root cause. Okay. All right. So in terms of the way I like to structure the investigation, I'm just going to divide the questions into the intrinsic parts and the extrinsic parts. So intrinsic part could be about like some kind of the technical issues that commonly arise in terms of like logins and bugs in the systems, etc. And also in terms of like product side, like some of the new features, app upgrade, and stuff like that happening inside our team and also happening across company. For the extrinsic factors, I'm going to have a look at the seasonalities, some of the behaviors, some of the things going on in the competitors in the space, and also had to have a look at just what generally is going on. Yeah, does that structure look sounds good to you? Okay, so things we already have quite a few data points at hand, and I think right now there is quite a few reasons we could probably rule out. So first is that because we know that it's kind of a gradual change, right? So it's just kind of in the past 2 weeks, it's just kind of indicating some change in the user behaviors, right? So it's very unlikely that it's due to some kind of logging issues, break off, or yeah. So that's probably something we can rule out in terms of the technical issues. Okay. So since we're already on the technical side, maybe I'm going to have a look at if is there any like increase in terms of like feedback from the users or tickets filed for about reports of bugs, right? Because that could possibly lead to some of the data we are seeing, right? Maybe so display in the mobiles is a little bit off for LinkedIn events, and it just make the user experience super uncomfortable. So I'd love to have a look at that.
Okay.
So how does the data look like for like, is there any kind of increase in terms of bug reports, tickets filed or user feedback?
How about this? Maybe you just talk about possible reasons that you can come up with, because right now we don't have any more data for you. So why not just talk about how you think about this process?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Sounds good. Okay. So because so what's going on is that we have a bigger decline in the mobile and also decline across all, right? So I mean, a possible things we could think about is, of course, there's some change to the features or to the app itself, right? So we can probably slice through some of the versions in terms of like, and they're trying to have a look at, if there's any correlation between, some release of the new versions and the trend we are seeing, right? So that's about like having a look at the new versions and potential change to the features. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's in terms, I think, the most likely intrinsic factor I can think of. And in terms of like extrinsic factors, the most likely one I'm thinking about because of the specific time we are in right now, like because in the past 2 weeks is kind of all right, I probably shouldn't assume like in the past 2 weeks you're talking about the past 2 weeks from now, right? But it's always kind of good to look at some of the seasonality factors, trying to check like if there's some similar trends in the past. And so this is just nothing special, but it's just something happening over and over again, right? So it's always good to have a look at some of the pattern in the past to see if there's really nothing wrong going on, but it's just some seasonality factors. Yeah, because events, that's really seasonal because you don't really have peaks of events organized during some time in the year, and so it's very likely it could be a seasonal one.
Yeah. What else?
Okay, and let's see. Competitor could also be a very likely reason because in terms of events organizing, LinkedIn events is definitely not the only one in the space, right? So especially like for example, like online events, I think LinkedIn has a pretty good edge. But in terms of like offline events, there's really a lot of other competitors in the field. So Eventbrite and also some of the more integrated event hosting solutions, which is just going to provide everything from marketing to the events hosting itself, right? So there can be, so I would also like to have a look at, whether there's certain kind of actions, marketing campaigns, or major new upgrade from our competitors that might significantly improve the user experience, or just will potentially attract a large group of our current users of LinkedIn events to their platforms, especially in the mobile space, which could also explain the decline in the usage.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Let's see. Okay. Okay, and so after just going through some of the usual factors, I think it's kind of always good just to have a look at the user journey. Through like using the LinkedIn event, so especially on the mobile, and to see like if there is any part of the funnel that could potentially break off and have some issues. So since I'm not a heavy user of LinkedIn event, would you mind I just pull off my phone and have a look at exactly how does the user journey look like?
Maybe you just think about some possible journeys that users go through, and probably tell me some examples in your mind that maybe like, how do you think about this funnel, and how could we have a drop in the user engagement?
For sure, absolutely. So user LinkedIn events, right? So an event, then you first have the, let's say, you have the supply and demand side, right? It's just something going on. And for supply side, let's just say, something happened in the mobile experience that just makes it really difficult to organize events, right? That could be an issue, but it's unlikely, highly unlikely to be the one here, right? Because if there's something happening in terms of the supply user experience, right? So it's just event organizers have a lot of difficulty and troubles organizing events on their phones, then we would see a significant decline in usage across both the mobile and the desktop space. So I think that's probably something we could rule out for now. So in terms of like, there's a significant issue happening in terms of organizing, creating events in the mobile experience, right? So next step of the funnel is, of course, once we create the events, we have to market the event, advertise the events, right? And we wanted to reach more and more customers, users, right? That's kind of the second step. And again, like for a similar reason, actually, I probably shouldn't rule out so easily. We could definitely have a look at, the entire, how like if there's a kind of change in the data in terms of like the push notifications and maybe event reminders, how in the feed, right? If there's happening to some of the recommendation strategies and algorithms for LinkedIn events in users feed, right? That could potentially lead to a decline in the exposure of the events in the user's feed, right? Which would lead to less people being aware that there's actually events going on and add them to their calendars, right? Which could also be an issue. So, and the third step is, of course, like once you see events posting, right, in the feed or somewhere in the organization you follow, in person you follow, right? Then the step is, of course, added to your calendars, or you just signify that I want to attend events, right? And of course, something could go wrong here, right? Maybe the mobile has some issue really adding that to the user's calendars, right? And so something could fall off there. We can also have a look at that. But then like there's also the next step is kind of like when the event is actually taking place, right? So like maybe half an hour before the event, or right before the event, right? Like which is exactly what we did here. So we kind of posted a notification half an hour before the event, and immediately before the event that the event is taking place, right? So usually on the mobiles, that's going to take the forms of maybe a push notification, right? In some of the cases, and in the at least it's going to be a new item in your notification, right? So we could also have a look at that, maybe if there's any change in those kind of steps, those kind of processes, and to see if there's something not doing well. And so what happened is that like users don't get reminded properly when the event is taking place, and that of course is going to lead to a decline in usage, right? Because the people just don't realize, okay, whatever event they signed up for is actually taking place. So that could also lead to a decline in usage. And let's suppose that like they actually join the event, right? So the event itself, right? And there's also kind of a lot of things that's kind of going on there. The first thing is that like, let's just say it's an online event, right? If it's an online event, then there is a lot of issues like the video streaming qualities, right? And if that's not good, well, there's going to be a lot of issues. And there's also the factors of like interactions between the event hosters and the attendees, right? The chats, the interactions, a lot of the response. And if any of them just doesn't work very well, let's suppose like I'm someone like eager to attend like Xiaodai's event, right? I'm just sending her message like crazy, okay, asking questions, but somehow the chat system is broken, and like she actually didn't see any of my questions or interactions. I'll definitely get frustrated and probably rage quit halfway through, right? So that could also lead to a decline in usage, right? So yeah, so it's just kind of the entire user journey of like the entire funnel through. And if anything breaks during that process for the mobile platform, that could definitely lead to a decline in usage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Let's see. Maybe I can kind of just ask for a bit more clarification. So when you said like the usage is down, right? Just using the framework we just talked about, throughout the entire user journey. So when you said usage is down, like, is there any like specific parts, of the journey or the funnel we talked about that's down? Like, yeah, because what I have in head is that, if it's possible that like people are still using the events as they're supposed to, but maybe just for the event itself, they jump to another platforms, right? So that's kind of a hypothesis. So just so for me to verify that hypothesis, I'd kind of like to know, like just to break the usage into finer granularities, what exactly is, which exact step is happening for the declining usage. Yeah.
I thought you were going to ask that question earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we don't have any information regarding user engagement, but I think if you have nothing else to add, I can start with my feedback.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. So I thought you were going to ask me the question earlier. What is the we talk about, right? In most cases, the interviewer probably won't have the answer to you, but it's okay for you to make a hypothesis. So, for example, you probably want to say the active user for LinkedIn events, or maybe the average attendees of events, or maybe the interaction people are getting, or like the reaction of an event in average, things like that. Make your own hypothesis. but
Mhm.
you must do that hypothesis before your analysis, or
Mhm.
your analysis will just be like with no direction, right? So
Mhm.
this is the first feedback I want to give. And the second one, I'm seeing you adding your own framework here, which is good.
Mhm.
But after you talk about technical issue, you want to talk more about the user behavior. Try
Mhm.
to make a clear framework to analyze.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
from your analysis, you're lacking of funnel thinking. I
Mhm.
analyze the user segments like from the supplier side and from the demand side. That is.
Mhm.
And what about the supplier side, right? For the event organizer, what is their user journey? What is the first step, the second step? Maybe you want to talk about whether we have a drop in maybe weekly active user, then we,
Mhm.
if they have a login or sign up issue, and then
Mhm.
we can talk about whether there is anything wrong with the number of events that are hold in the to see whether there is an issue for the organizers. And for the consumers, it's the same thing, right? If you think about all the entry points for LinkedIn events, maybe
Mhm.
network under the network tab, or from the new from the fees, right?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
maybe from personal invitation, right? What
Mhm.
if the number of invitations people are getting from their friends are declining?
Mhm.
You need to uh, think about it from a funnel perspective, like what is the
Mhm.
traffic come from, right? And
Mhm.
then what is the next step? So
Mhm.
from that part, I think you need a little bit more structure.
Mhm.
And apart from that, also from your funnel, from your whole funnel, your lack of like a social effect. If you think
Mhm.
about if the organizers are sharing their events, if the attendees are sharing their events, if they're doing internal sharing or they're doing external sharing, right? Is
Mhm.
wrong with the external link that they're copying, like to Facebook, to Twitter, to all those platforms. So you want
Right.
to know whether there is something wrong with the traffic coming from third parties.
Mhm.
And also because it is a gradual decline, you might also want to think about what if there is some trust and safety issue going on, right?
Mhm.
There are a lot of people connecting with people, connecting with others after they attend an event. What if
Mhm.
there are some black sheep happening, right? Like people
Mhm.
spam the others. Is there increase in the reports? Is there increase
Mhm.
in spam messages from people who attend
Mhm.
the event? So you might also want to look at that part. But overall, I think
Mhm.
your answer has structure. You cover most of the points. If I'm your interviewer, and I think the most important thing that you need to remember for your answer is to maybe structure your user journey better,
Mhm.
and make it like a more clear step for the interviewer.
I see. Mhm. Okay. So
Questions?
most. Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I see.
And also, when you talk about competitors, it's not only about competitors, right? Like you also talk about maybe new features launched inside LinkedIn.
Mhm.
If you think about how
Uh,
users host event, this is not necessarily to be video events. It's
Earlier.
can also be audio events, right?
How
Like
do you? Right. Okay.
if there are other internal competitors going on,
Mhm.
yeah, you can elaborate on that part. But overall, you did a
Mhm.
good job, and you probably want to communicate in a more confident way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thinking you covered most of the points, so you should be confident to your interviewer. And
Okay.
as a product manager, the interviewer expect you to be confident.
Mhm. Mhm.
You will have conversations with top people, and this is something a product manager should have.
Okay. I see. I see. Yep. Definitely. Well, probably due to my COVID through. Yeah. I did some.
You get better.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Really appreciate the feedback. Yeah.
So let's
Thank you.
stop the recording right now.